All right, so today we're going deep on something you might not expect, the psychology of decision-making.
Yeah.
We like to think we're totally in control, when it comes to our choices.
Yeah.
But have you ever wondered, if there are these hidden things at play that are kind of like nudging us in certain directions
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
without us even realizing it?
Absolutely.
So we're going to be looking at something called choice architecture.
Yeah.
Basically, how the way choices are presented to us
Right.
can totally influence what we pick,
Yeah,
even if we don't realize it.
absolutely.
And to help us break this down, we're going to be looking at the work of Dan Ariely. He's
Yeah.
a behavioral economist
Yeah.
who's kind of made a career out of exposing these hidden influences.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, so we're going to uncover some really surprising examples from things like organ donation rates
Okay.
to magazine subscriptions.
Yeah.
That'll really make you rethink how much control you really have
Right.
over your decisions. So let's start with the power of defaults.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You might be surprised to learn that something as simple as
Right.
whether a box is already checked on a form
Yeah,
can significantly impact people's choices.
totally.
So paint me a picture here. What kind of impact are we talking about?
Okay. So think about organ donation rates in Europe.
Okay.
Some countries have what's called an opt-in system,
Okay.
where you have to actively check a box
Right.
to become an organ donor.
Okay.
Others have an opt-out system,
Okay.
meaning you're automatically a donor,
Got it.
unless you specifically choose not to be.
So it's all about whether you have to check the box or uncheck it.
Exactly.
Easy peasy.
And the results are really striking.
Yeah.
Countries that have these opt-out systems
Right.
consistently have much higher donation rates.
Wow.
Even though people's underlying attitudes about organ donation
Right.
are probably pretty similar across those countries.
There's a huge difference.
It is.
So it's not necessarily about people's altruism or willingness to give.
Right.
It's more about the path of least resistance.
It really is. People, when they're confronted with a really complex decision,
Yeah.
especially one that has some emotional weight like organ donation,
Right.
they tend to just stick with the default.
The default. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes me think about things like retirement savings plans.
Oh, yeah.
If you're automatically enrolled.
Right.
Unless you opt out,
Yeah.
chances are you're going to stick with it. Even if you hadn't actually thought about saving for retirement before.
Such a good example. That's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
This is how defaults can really be used to kind of nudge people towards positive behaviors.
Yeah.
But this principle isn't just limited to forms and checkboxes.
Okay.
It's everywhere.
Right.
It pops up in all sorts of places.
Interesting.
Let's look at another interesting example, the decoy effect.
A decoy effect.
Decoy effect.
Okay. Sounds sneaky.
It is a little bit...
Tell me more.
Okay, imagine you're planning a trip to Europe.
Okay.
And you're looking at 2 travel packages.
Right.
An all-inclusive trip to Rome
Okay.
or an all-inclusive trip to Paris.
Yeah, I'd be torn.
You'd be torn, right? They both sound amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Tough decision.
Now, what if they threw in a third option?
No way.
A trip to Rome
Okay.
with meals included,
Okay.
but no accommodation?
Yeah.
Suddenly, that all-inclusive Rome package
Right.
is a lot better.
But why? That third option seems like
It does.
it's almost designed to be a bad choice.
That's the whole point.
Okay.
It's a decoy,
A decoy.
a strategically placed option
Okay.
that makes one of the others look better by comparison.
So we're not really evaluating them on their own.
No.
We're comparing them to each other.
Exactly. We tend to judge things relative to each other,
Right.
not based on their absolute value.
So the decoy is like a reference point. It
Yes.
shifts our whole perception.
It does. And this decoy effect, it's not just for travel packages either.
Right.
Have you ever noticed how, some magazines
Yeah.
offer these 3 subscription options?
Yes.
Online only.
Yeah.
Print only.
Right.
Or online and print bundled together.
Yep. I've seen that.
And that print only often looks
Way overpriced.
way overpriced, right?
Compared to the bundle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's no accident.
So they're nudging you towards that.
Yeah, they're nudging you.
More expensive bundle.
Towards the bundle. Yeah.
Wow. So these seemingly insignificant choices about how information is presented to us
Right.
can have a real impact on our decisions.
Big time.
That's crazy.
It really is. And this brings us to another really fascinating example
Okay.
that shows just how subtle these influences can be.
Okay.
The ugly friend effect.
Okay. An ugly friend effect.
The ugly friend effect.
Now you really have my attention.
All right.
This has to do with dating, right?
It does. It does. And it's not just a myth. There's actual research
Okay.
behind this.
Interesting.
In one study, researchers showed people pictures of 2 men
Okay.
and asked them who they would rather go on a date with.
So just based on looks.
Just based on looks. But
Okay. Were the results like pretty even?
yeah, pretty much the responses were fairly balanced between the two men.
Okay.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
They introduced a third picture.
Okay, let me guess.
Go ahead.
This third guy was not as attractive.
Exactly. They added an uglier version of one of the original men.
Okay.
And what they found was the presence of this less attractive version
Right.
actually made the normal version seem more desirable.
Wait, so just by adding like a less appealing option,
Yeah.
people's perceptions of the original guy
Yeah.
actually change?
It's wild, right?
That's so weird.
It's all about relative comparison again.
Okay.
Our brains are always
Yeah.
evaluating options in the context of what else is available.
So even in something as personal as choosing a potential date,
Yeah.
we're not immune to these subtle influences.
Nope.
Like if our choices can be swayed in something like that,
Right. Yeah.
it makes you wonder how susceptible we are
It does.
to manipulation in other areas of life,
Truly.
like marketing,
You got
advertising, all that.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
It is.
We've seen how defaults,
Yeah.
decoys, and even our own evolutionary wiring
Right.
can play a role in shaping our decisions.
But the key takeaway isn't to feel powerless, right?
No, definitely not.
It's to become more aware.
Right.
So how do we become more savvy consumers of information, so to speak?
Oh, that's a great question.
Like, can we actually outsmart
I love that.
these sneaky tactics?
Well, the first step is recognizing that they exist.
Okay.
Once you kind of understand how choice architecture works,
Right.
you can start to spot these patterns
Yeah.
in your own life.
Okay.
Start paying attention to how choices are presented to you.
So it's not about being suspicious of every choice
No.
we encounter, but more about being mindful.
Exactly. Mindfulness, that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, is this really what I want?
Right.
Or am I being influenced by the way these options are framed?
Okay.
It's about taking that extra second to really consider the underlying structure
Yeah.
of the choice.
That makes sense. But let's be realistic.
Sure.
Sometimes we're just bombarded with decisions,
We are.
and it feels impossible to analyze every single one.
Yeah.
Are we doomed to fall prey to these biases when
Yeah.
we're, tired, stressed,
It's-
overwhelmed?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Right.
true that we're much more susceptible to these
Right.
influences when we're
Yeah.
tired
Yeah.
or stressed.
Yeah.
Our cognitive resources are depleted.
Right.
But that's all the more reason to be aware of them.
Yeah.
We can't totally eliminate these biases.
Right.
But we can learn to navigate them better.
Okay.
For sure.
That makes sense. This is all pretty mind-blowing stuff, isn't it?
But it also feels empowering.
It is empowering.
Like, if we can understand how our brains work,
Yeah.
we can at least start to make more conscious, intentional decisions.
I love that word, intentional.
Yeah.
It is all about intentionality.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the goal.
And it's not just about avoiding manipulation either, right?
Right.
These same principles
Yeah.
can actually be used for good.
100%.
That's an interesting angle.
Yeah.
So instead of just thinking about how we're being manipulated,
Right.
we can also think about how these principles can be used to nudge people
Yeah.
towards positive behaviors.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
It is.
So give me an example.
Think about how defaults are used in retirement savings plans
Okay.
by automatically enrolling employees,
Right.
unless they opt out.
Yeah.
Companies are encouraging people to save for their future,
Right.
even if they wouldn't have done it otherwise.
That's such a great example.
Yeah. What about those grocery stores that place healthy food options at eye level?
Oh, yeah.
That's like a subtle nudge
Yes.
to make healthier choices.
Exactly. It's not about forcing anyone. It's about designing environments
Right.
that make it easier for people to make choices
Yeah.
that align with their best interests.
Right.
Whether that's saving for retirement,
Yeah.
eating healthier,
Right.
or even donating their organs.
It seems like the key takeaway here is that it's all about intention.
It is.
Are these techniques being used
Right.
to exploit our weaknesses?
Yeah.
Or are they being used
Right.
to help us make choices that benefit us
Exactly.
in society?
You nailed it. It's a powerful tool
It is.
that can be used for good or bad.
Right.
And by understanding how choice architecture works,
Yeah.
we can start to ask those critical questions
Right.
about intention and design.
This whole conversation has really made me rethink my own decision-making process.
Has it?
It's like I'm seeing the world through a new lens.
I love that.
But there's one big question that keeps popping into my head.
Okay.
if our choices aren't always as free as we think,
Right.
what does that mean for the concept of free will itself?
Oh, that's a big one.
It is a big one.
It does make you think, doesn't it?
It really does.
But instead of getting all philosophical,
Right.
let's focus on what we can control,
Right.
our own awareness,
Okay.
and our own decision-making.
All right, so let's get practical.
Okay.
If we want to be more intentional about our choices,
Yeah.
what are some things we can do?
Well, we already talked about paying attention to defaults.
Okay.
Don't just blindly accept
Right.
whatever option is pre-selected.
Right.
Take a moment to pause.
Yeah.
Ask yourself if it really aligns with
Yeah.
your needs,
Okay.
your preferences.
So like when you're signing up for some new service online,
Yeah.
don't just automatically click agree
Right.
without actually looking at those terms and conditions.
Exactly. Those pre-checked boxes
Yeah.
are like a prime example
Yeah.
of how defaults can influence us.
Okay.
Another key strategy
Right.
is to be wary of decoys.
Decoys, right?
Think back to that travel package example.
Right.
The presence of a less attractive option.
Right, like that Rome trip without the hotel. It
Exactly.
was never really a contender,
Right.
but it shifted how we thought
It did.
about the other option.
Exactly. So when you're evaluating choices,
Yeah.
be on the lookout for those decoys.
Okay.
That might be skewing your judgment.
So it's kind of like being a detective,
Yeah.
looking for clues
Mm.
about
I like
how the choice is being presented.
Exactly. What else should we be on the lookout for?
Hmm.
I don't know what else.
One of the most powerful things you can do
Yeah.
is connect back to your goals
Okay.
when you're facing a decision.
Okay.
Take a moment to remind yourself
Right.
of what you're really aiming for.
That's so important.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up
It is.
in the details.
All the marketing hype. Lose sight of the big picture.
Absolutely. By clarifying your goals,
Yeah.
you create a framework
Right.
for making decisions that really align
Right.
with your values.
So it's about taking a step back,
Yeah.
asking, does this choice
Yeah.
actually move me closer
Exactly.
to what I want to achieve?
I love that.
And don't forget about the long-term consequences.
Yes.
Sometimes the most tempting option in the moment
Right.
isn't actually the best one
No,
for us in the long run.
for sure.
That makes me think about those experiments
Yeah.
with the kids and the marshmallows.
Oh, yeah. The marshmallow test.
The kids who could delay gratification,
Right.
waiting for 2 marshmallows instead of taking one right away,
Yeah.
tended to be more successful later in life.
It's true.
It's a great reminder
It is.
that sometimes it pays to resist those immediate impulses.
So true. Such a good point.
By considering those long-term implications,
Yes.
we can make decisions that lead to more lasting happiness,
Absolutely.
fulfillment, all that.
I love it.
Well, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
I feel like we've peeled back the layers
Yeah.
of everyday decision-making,
Absolutely.
uncovered all these hidden influences.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, it's a lot to think about, isn't it?
It is.
But instead of going down that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
maybe we should focus on, what we can actually control,
Right.
like our own awareness and how we make decisions.
So let's get practical then.
Okay.
What can we do?
To be more intentional with our choices.
Okay, so we talked about the defaults,
Yeah.
not just accepting whatever's pre-selected for us.
All right, take a second pause.
Right.
Think about if it actually makes sense for you.
Yeah.
If it really fits what you want.
Like when you're signing up for something online,
Yeah.
don't just click agree
Exactly.
without really reading those terms and conditions.
Those pre-checked boxes are a perfect example
Yeah.
of how defaults can sneakily influence us.
Yeah. Okay, so what else?
Well, another thing to watch out for are those decoys.
Decoys, right?
Remember the travel packages?
Yeah.
That less attractive option?
Right, the Rome trip without the hotel?
Exactly. It was never really a good choice,
No.
but it changed how we saw the other options.
Yeah, made them look better.
Exactly. So just be aware of those decoys.
Okay.
They might be messing with your judgment.
So it's like being a detective,
I love that analogy.
looking for clues.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what else should we watch out for?
One of the best things you can do is to just connect back to your goals.
Okay,
When you're facing a decision, take a minute.
right.
Remind yourself what you're really trying to do.
That's so important.
It really is. It's so easy to get lost
Yeah, in the details.
in the weeds.
Yeah, all the marketing stuff.
Absolutely.
And just completely lose track
Yes.
of what we're actually trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, when you're clear about your goals, it helps you make decisions that really fit with what you value.
Yeah, okay.
It helps you avoid getting pulled in by things that don't matter.
Okay, so take a step back.
Yeah.
Ask yourself if this choice is actually going to help me.
Exactly.
reach my goal.
I love that.
And don't forget about what's going to happen down the line.
A long game.
Yeah, sometimes the thing that looks best right now
That's it.
isn't actually what's best for us.
In the long run.
Yeah, that reminds me of those studies they did
Yeah.
with kids and marshmallows.
Oh, yeah, the marshmallow test.
The ones who waited to get 2 marshmallows.
Right, instead of taking one right away.
Yeah, those kids ended up doing better later in life.
Yeah, they did.
It just shows that sometimes it's better to resist those impulses.
That instant gratification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we think about what's going to happen later,
Yeah,
it helps us make choices that are going to make us happy
for sure.
long term.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been fascinating.
Hasn't it?
I feel like we've really gotten a look behind the curtain of how we make decisions every day.
It's really interesting stuff.
All those hidden influences,
Yeah, and remember, this isn't the end.
right?
Every choice you make, big or small,
Yeah.
it's a chance to use what we've learned
Okay.
to be more in control of your own life.
So to everyone listening,
Yeah.
start paying attention to the choices you're making.
Big and small.
Notice those defaults.
Yeah.
Watch out for the decoys.
Yes.
And always ask yourself, is this what I really want?
Such a good question.
And if you ever feel stuck,
Yeah.
remember, you always have the power to choose.
You do.
And by understanding how things work,
Yeah.
you can make choices that really fit who you are
Absolutely.
and what you want in life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive
It's been a pleasure.
into the illusion of choice.
Until next time.
Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep making those choices count.